When I first opened the photo on Alina's phone, I expected panic. A stalker, an ex, a stranger in the crowd, something that explained why she froze on stage. But what I actually saw, what we all saw, didn't make sense in any version of physical reality. The image was captured from just a few feet behind her. You could see her veil, the shimmer of her dress, even the tiny rhinestones pinned into her hair. The angle was low, as if the person had crouched behind her. But it wasn't the angle that set my nerves on fire. It was what wasn't there. Behind Alina stood her bridal party, 6 bridesmaids dressed in soft champagne satin. I had personally interviewed each of them hours earlier. They were alive, loud, laughing women, and in the actual wedding footage, they were all standing right there behind her during the speech. But in the photo, 5 of them appeared clearly. The 6th, Leela Redwood, Alina's childhood best friend, was missing. Not blurred, not obscured, not partially out of frame, missing. As if she simply didn't exist in the moment the photo was taken. And Leela had been standing less than a foot behind Alina, close enough that Alina's veil brushed her dress. The sheriff leaned closer to the screen, his voice low and uncertain. Someone edited this. Has to be, but the metadata contradicted him. No edits, no filters, no manipulation, one raw shot, taken by the sender. At the exact moment Alina stepped up to speak, but then I looked again, zoomed in. And that's when the freezing weight sank into my chest. In the glass lantern hanging above the stage, faint, distorted, was a reflection, not of Alina, not of the guests, not of the bridesmaids. A figure crouched behind her exactly where the photo would have been taken from, except the figure's reflection was wrong, too tall for the angle, too sharp around the shoulders, and positioned exactly where Leela should have been standing. The sheriff swore under his breath, "Tell me that's a trick of the light." It wasn't. I'd seen that shape before in older cases involving stage disappearances where the abductor used specialized equipment to move someone quickly without drawing attention. But even those cases left traces. Footsteps, shadows, disruptions. This left none. I asked to speak to the bridesmaids. One of them, Kennedy Rhodes, looked pale when I mentioned the missing reflection. Leela left the line for a moment, she said. Just before Alina started talking, she stepped back. I thought she was fixing her makeup. Did anyone see her return? I asked. They all shook their heads. The room chilled. 200 guests. 2 videographers, 4 photographers. Yet not a single person recalled seeing Leela return to her spot behind Alina. We found her bridesmaid bouquet on the floor behind the stage, petals crushed as if dropped in a hurry. Her phone was still locked in a pouch the bridal party handed in earlier. Her purse, untouched in the dressing room. Her shoes, heels Alina had bought for all her bridesmaids, were still neatly lined up by the wall. Leela had left barefoot. Or she had been taken. Either option was bad. But the next piece of evidence was worse. A vineyard employee reported seeing someone near the service corridor minutes before the lights flickered. Someone wearing a champagne-colored dress matching the bridesmaids, but walking strangely, stiff, purposeful, almost mechanical. He assumed it was one of the bridal party rushing to fix something. But what caught his attention wasn't her walk, it was what happened when she passed a wall-mounted mirror. She didn't appear in it, not a silhouette, not a blur, nothing. The sheriff turned to me. "Claire, are you thinking what I'm thinking?" I nodded. "Alina didn't disappear alone," I said. "Someone else vanished first, and whoever or whatever was in that photo behind her wasn't Leela." But the most chilling part was still ahead. Because an hour later, we found security footage deep in the service corridor. And for a full 3 seconds, the camera caught the reflectionless figure walking away from the wedding, holding Alina's veil in one hand. We had 200 guests, cameras rolling, and a bride who stepped up to the mic smiling. 30 seconds into her speech, she disappeared. No scream, no struggle, no shadow. Just gone. My name is Attorney Claire Monroe, and if you're hearing this for the first time, hit subscribe, because this is the one that made seasoned detectives walk out of the room. Nothing prepares you for a disappearance that happens right in front of your eyes, but leaves behind no evidence of how. It was a Saturday evening, the kind of sky writers dream about, warm gold fading into dark blue. The venue was a historic vineyard estate in Northern California, candlelit tables, a live string quartet, the smell of roses so thick you could taste it. The kind of wedding that makes you believe everything is going to be perfect. The bride, Alina Marlowe, was a 27-year-old pediatric nurse, kind, steady, the type who remembered everyone's birthdays and baked for the whole apartment complex every Christmas. She wasn't the kind of person who made enemies. Everyone said the same thing. Alina didn't just light up a room, she warmed it. At 8:41 p.m., she took the microphone for her welcome speech. She stood beneath a canopy of hanging lanterns, the light catching the shimmer of her gown. The groom, Tyler Reed, watched her with both hands clasped over his mouth. He adored her. You didn't need a law degree to see it. But then there was something, a flicker, a movement. A shift in her expression that lasted less than a heartbeat but unsettled everyone who reviewed the footage later. The video shows Alina smile, inhale to speak again, and then it looks like she glances over the crowd, not at someone but through them. Past them, as if she's recognizing something or someone no one else sees. She pauses mid-sentence. Her hand trembles. A guest in the third row said she thought Alina looked like someone hearing her name whispered from behind. Another guest described it as a look of absolute recognition mixed with shock. And then 8:42 p.m., the lights flicker. Just once, a guest laughs nervously. The DJ taps his mixer. Someone jokes about the generator. Alina's eyes widen, her breath hitches, and then her silhouette blurs on camera for less than a second. And she's gone, not collapsed. Not pulled, not walked away, gone. The microphone spins on its stand and falls. Guests scream. The groom runs to where she had been standing, hands shaking, patting the ground as if she'd simply fallen through some invisible hatch. But there wasn't any hatch. I know because I was there 15 minutes later. You never forget the sound of 200 people going from celebration to terror. The violinists frozen mid-bow, mothers clutching their children. The father of the bride staring at an empty space where his daughter had been seconds before. Security footage showed nothing. Alina didn't run, she didn't faint. She didn't step off stage. She didn't appear anywhere else on the property. She simply vanished from every camera angle at the exact same second. The sheriff asked me to consult because of my background with complex missing person cases. But this wasn't a simple disappearance. This was precision. This was planned. This was executed in a way that suggested someone understood every inch of that venue, every blind spot, every lighting cue, every second the crowd wasn't looking. But the strangest part wasn't the footage, or the panic, or the fact that a bride vanished during her own wedding speech. It was what we found on Alina's phone. A text message, time-stamped 8:36 p.m., 5 minutes before she disappeared, a message she never opened. A message from an unknown number, a message that said, "I'm here, don't look scared." And beneath it, a photo taken inside the wedding venue, a photo taken from behind Alina. We found the footage in the least glamorous corner of the venue, an old, narrow service hallway lined with crates of wine bottles and utility closets. The camera itself was ancient, the kind of grainy, low-resolution security feed no one bothers checking unless they're desperate. And we were beyond desperate. I remember the moment the technician called us over. Counselor, you're gonna want to see this." The sheriff and I stood shoulder to shoulder as the playback loaded. Timestamp 8:44 p.m. 2 minutes after Alina vanished. At first, all we saw was an empty hallway, a flicker in the frame, dust drifting in a thin beam of light, a mop bucket in the corner. Then the figure walked in, not rushed, not fleeing, just moving deliberately. They wore a champagne-colored dress identical to the bridesmaids' gowns. The fabric caught the dim corridor lights with an eerie shimmer. One arm hung stiffly by their side, the other clutched something long, white, and trailing. Alina's veil. The sheriff leaned in. "Freeze it." We stopped on the first clear frame. The figure's head turned slightly, revealing a partial side profile. The skin looked pale, almost unnaturally smooth. The cheekbone too sharp. The jawline too narrow to be human, not a mask, something closer to a replica of a face. But then, the detail that made my stomach drop. No shadows under the chin, no shadow on the wall. The feet didn't fully connect with the floor, hovering by a fraction. And the mirrored wine fridge beside the figure, completely empty. No reflection. The sheriff whispered, "What am I looking at, Claire?" Before I could answer, someone else gasped behind us. It was the groom, Tyler Reed. He had been pacing outside the tech room for nearly an hour, refusing to leave until we knew something, anything. And now he stood frozen, one hand gripping the doorframe so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Run it again," Tyler said, voice trembling. We did. The figure re-entered the frame. The champagne gown swayed unnaturally as if the air around the body moved differently. The fingers curled around the veil looked elongated, too symmetrical. Tyler swallowed hard. "That's not Leela," he whispered. "No," I said, "it isn't." He shook his head violently. "No, you don't understand." He stepped closer to the screen, pointing with a trembling hand. I know that face." The sheriff stiffened. "You know them?" Tyler nodded slowly, eyes locked on the figure's half-turned profile. His breathing quickened. I have seen that face before." "Where?" I asked. Tyler hesitated. He wiped sweat from his forehead and stared at the monitor, horrified. "That's Alina's mother." The room went silent. Alina's mother, Margaret Marlowe, had died nearly 3 years earlier from a sudden cardiac event. Tyler had met her twice at the beginning of his relationship with Alina. He remembered her vividly, the sharp cheekbones, the narrow jawline, the way her lips curved at the edges when she was concentrating. But Margaret was gone, buried. Her funeral well documented. The sheriff shook his head. "Tyler, that's impossible." Tyler didn't look away from the screen. "No, not impossible. Look, focus on the eyes." We zoomed in. The eyes of the figure held a strange, glassy sheen, dark, reflective, too smooth. A manufactured likeness. Not human tissue, not living, almost like a reconstruction. A reproduction, or something made to look like Alina's mother. But then the footage revealed something else. The figure paused in the hallway, then turned fully toward the camera. The entire face came into view, and for a brief, horrifying second, the camera captured a glitch in the features. The left cheek collapsing inward like melted wax, the jawline shifting shape, the eyelids blinking but not in sync. The sheriff recoiled. "Christ, what is wrong with its face?" Tyler backed into the wall, shaking violently. "That's her. Or something wearing her, something made to look like her." But what chilled me wasn't the face, it was the veil. In that close-up we could see a smear of foundation on the veil's edge. Alina's wedding makeup. There were faint crease marks where it had been gripped too tightly, almost crushed, evidence of physical force, meaning Alina had been dragged or pulled out of sight. Alive. The last seconds of the clip were the worst. The figure reached a metal service door at the end of the corridor and simply vanished. No door opening, no sound. One frame they were there. The next, they were gone with the veil dissolving into the empty air. Tyler whispered, "Claire, where did she go?" I didn't have the heart to answer the real truth. We weren't dealing with a kidnapper. We were dealing with something that moved in ways no human could. And 2 minutes after Alina vanished, this thing had been inside the venue, walking openly, unchallenged, holding part of her wedding dress like a trophy. But the biggest shock came 10 minutes later when we discovered a second piece of footage. One the venue owner had forgotten even existed. A silent camera outside facing the vines. And in that video we saw the figure again, moving through the vineyard rows, except this time, they weren't alone. The second camera was one the venue owner almost forgot existed. A small, weather-damaged unit fixed high above the vineyard's north fence. It wasn't connected to the main system, didn't record audio, and the owner used it only during harvest season to watch for stray animals. But that night, thank God, it was still running. Timestamp, 8:46 p.m., 4 minutes after Alina vanished. 2 minutes after the reflectionless figure disappeared from the service corridor. The footage began with a wide shot of the vineyard, rows of perfectly aligned vines stretching out like ribs under the moonlight. A faint breeze made the leaves shimmer. Nothing unusual, no movement, until there was. At the far left corner of the vines, a silhouette emerged. Long dress, bare feet, stiff posture, the same figure. They moved with unnatural fluidity, arms too straight, head tilted as though being guided by invisible strings. The veil still hung from one hand, dragging in the dirt behind them. Even through the grainy feed, the motion didn't match anything human. The sheriff muttered, "What the hell?" But then something else stepped into view. A second figure. This one smaller, softer, hair loose, wearing a pale lilac satin robe, the kind bridesmaids wore while getting ready in the bridal suite. And that's when my lungs stopped working. The face was unmistakable. Leela Redwood, the missing bridesmaid. Barefoot, disoriented, eyes half open, half dreaming, with a blankness that made my skin crawl. But what terrified me most wasn't that Leela was there, it was how she moved. Not running, not struggling, not screaming. She followed the reflectionless figure like a sleepwalker, steps perfectly matched, arms loose at her sides, head slightly bowed as if responding to a silent command. "Pause it," I said. The technician froze the frame. Leela's pupils were blown wide, too dark, too dilated, her lips parted as if caught mid-whisper. The sheriff leaned closer, squinting. "Is she conscious?" "She's alive," I said. "But she's not controlling herself." The groom, Tyler, who had been silently absorbing everything, suddenly spoke. His voice shook so violently the words barely formed. "She looks Claire, she looks hypnotized." I didn't disagree. We let the footage roll again. The two figures walked deeper into the vines, disappearing between the rows. The moonlight flickered over them through the leaves, creating gaps where the taller figure's body should have cast shadows. But it didn't. The sheriff clenched his jaw. "There's no way this is human, no way." Then the camera caught something the tech almost missed. A third figure, a man, stumbling from the right side of the vineyard, waving his arms, shouting words the silent camera couldn't capture. He tripped, fell, got up again, desperate to catch the two walking ahead of him. The resolution wasn't great, but we could make out enough. He wore a dark gray suit, white boutonniere, and a long, jagged cut across his forehead. I recognized him instantly. Robert Langley, Alina's uncle, one of the wedding's groomsmen. We had spoken to him earlier that night. He was charming, loud, a bit drunk, and fiercely protective of his niece. There was no reason he should have been alone in the vineyard, and certainly no reason he should have been bleeding. He reached the end of the row, pointed at the reflectionless figure, and the silent footage showed him trying to shout something. He looked terrified. He wasn't alone for long. The tall figure turned slowly, and right then Robert froze, mid-step, mid-breath, mid-word, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Leela kept walking, vanishing into the vines. The tall figure moved closer to Robert until its face was inches from his. The sheriff whispered, "What's it doing to him?" Then the figure lifted one hand, pale, elongated fingers, and touched Robert's forehead. The moment contact was made, Robert dropped, straight down, like a stone, motionless, unconscious, or worse. Tyler staggered backward. What is happening? Who are these people? What is that thing?" But the camera wasn't done. The tall figure crouched beside Robert's body. Then, fast, precise, efficient, it lifted something from the ground. Not clothing, not a weapon, not personal items. It picked up Robert's boutonniere, a small flower pinned to his jacket. The figure held it delicately, turning it in its fingers like it was examining a clue, a sample, or a trophy. Then the feed glitched. 2 frames went black. When the footage resumed, the figure was gone. Robert was still on the ground. Leela was deeper in the vines. Alina was nowhere. Tyler pressed his palms against his eyes. This has to be a nightmare." But it wasn't. It was the first proof that whoever took Alina had also taken Leela, and that Robert somehow stumbled into something he wasn't meant to see. And then the technician's voice cracked through the quiet. "There's one more video." We all turned. "It's from a drone," he said. One of the guests brought a drone for wedding shots. "It captured something over the vineyard at 8:47. He hesitated. It wasn't alone in the sky. The drone belonged to one of the groom's cousins, a tech hobbyist who wanted aerial shots for the wedding montage. He'd forgotten the drone was still in the air when the chaos broke out inside the venue. It hovered for several minutes before automatically returning to its launch point. We loaded the footage on a larger monitor. Timestamp: 8:47 p.m. 1 minute after Leela disappeared into the vines. 1 minute after the reflectionless figure dropped Robert Langley. The drone's camera drifted above the vineyard rows, capturing the lantern-lit ceremony space in the distance. Guests running, chairs overturned, people shouting. From the air, the chaos looked like scattered insects fleeing a kicked nest. But farther out, deep in the dark rows of vines, was movement. We zoomed in. 2 figures. Leela Redwood walking in her trance-like state. And behind her, the tall, reflectionless thing moving with unnatural precision. The sheriff crossed his arms tightly. "This is already worse than anything I expected." But what made my blood turn to ice wasn't the ground, it was the sky. A shape drifted above the vineyard, coming into frame from the top right corner. At first, it looked like a smudge on the lens, then like a bird, then like something else entirely. The drone's autofocus struggled, sharpening, blurring, sharpening again as the object dipped lower over the vines. Long, angular, moving without any wing motion. Gliding, almost scanning. "Stop," I said. Go full zoom? The tech zoomed in pixel by pixel. The shape wasn't a bird, wasn't a drone, wasn't anything natural. Its outline shimmered as if the air around it bent under its weight. The body was elongated, narrow shoulders, long limbs tucked close, head slightly tilted downward. As it moved, the edges of its form flickered in and out, like it wasn't fully tethered to the physical world. The sheriff whispered, "What the hell is that?" Tyler backed away from the screen. No, 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 what?" I asked. "What are you seeing, Tyler?" He shook his head violently. "I've seen that shape before." "Where?" His voice cracked. "In a photo Alina kept in her nightstand. A photo she said she took outside her window last year. A shadow person, she called it. I thought she was joking. I thought it was dust or a glitch." He swallowed hard, trembling. "But it looked exactly like that." The drone footage showed the shape gliding lower, dipping between the rows, following Leela and the tall figure, like a predator watching its pack. Then something horrifying. The shape paused directly above Leela. She froze mid-step, her head tilted upward slowly like she was responding to a silent call. Her arms rose slightly, limp and puppet-like, and the shadow person shape flickered as if acknowledging her. The sheriff cursed under his breath. The tall, reflectionless figure stepped closer to Leela, placing one elongated hand on her back. Then together, they moved deeper into the vines as the aerial shape followed overhead. The tech whispered, "It's leading them somewhere." "No," I said slowly. "It's hurting them." As if responding, the aerial thing glided left, then right, creating a wave of distortion that rippled downward through the vines. Leaves trembled though there was no wind, branches dipped as if something passed through them. Then the drone captured the moment everything changed. A camera glitch, brief, half a second, but when the image cleared, Leela was gone. The tall figure was gone, the sky shape had vanished. Only the empty vineyard remained, whispering under the moon. Tyler pressed a hand to his mouth, choking back tears. "They're taking them, they're taking people." But the footage wasn't finished. As the drone hovered, trying to regain orientation, a final shadow darted across the ground. A blur but unmistakable, not the tall figure, not the aerial thing, someone running, fast, determined, terrified. The drone's angle caught their face for only a split second. It was Alina, dress torn, makeup streaked, barefoot, eyes wide, not blank like Leela's, but aware, horrified, breathless. She was running away from whatever had taken her. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, racing through the vines, was a second Alina, same dress, same hair, same face. Except the second one moved wrong, too straight, too fast, feet barely touching the ground. Tyler screamed. "Oh my God, THAT, that is not her, that is not my wife." And then the drone battery died, screen black. The tech whispered, "So which one is the real bride?" "No," I said quietly. "That's the wrong question." The sheriff turned to me. "Then what's the right question?" I looked at both frozen frames, the real Alina running for her life and the false Alina chasing her. The real question is, which Alina did we see vanish on stage? The room felt smaller after the drone footage. Too warm, too still, like the air itself knew something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. The sheriff paced behind me, rubbing his temples. Tyler sat motionless, staring at the frozen screen, his real bride running barefoot, a duplicate sprinting behind her like a perfect but corrupted mirror. I replayed the drone's final seconds in my mind. Two Alinas, one terrified, one unnatural. Then the sheriff stopped pacing. "Claire, we need to go back." "Back where?" "To the moment she vanished on stage." Because if the real Elena was running for her life out in the vineyard, who or what gave the wedding speech? I nodded. "We rewatch every second, frame by frame, slow motion." We returned to the ceremony footage, the string lights glowing, the quiet hum of guests. Elena stepping to the microphone, we watched her smile. We watched her inhale. We watched the lights flicker, but this time we didn't focus on her. We focused on the people behind her, especially the bridesmaids, 5 visible, 1 missing. Leela was already gone by then, but the disappearance we missed wasn't hers. "Pause," I said, "right there." The tech froze the frame. One of the groomsmen, Jonah Mills, stood behind the groom. He was laughing at something whispered by another guest. But his shoulders were angled oddly, turned away from the stage toward the side staircase. "Zoom in," I said. Jonah's face looked tense, not laughing, grimacing, sweating, eyes darting toward the shadows behind the draped curtains. "Does he look nervous to you?" I asked. Tyler nodded slowly. Jonah wasn't close to Alina, but he was protective. If he sensed something off, the sheriff finished the sentence, he'd act. The footage continued. Jonah took 2 steps backwards, slipping behind a group of seated relatives. Then another step, then another. No one noticed, everyone was focused on the bride, until he vanished behind the curtain. No one looked, no one cared. Rewind, I said, watch the curtain. We played it back. At the exact moment Jonah stepped behind it, the fabric shifted. Not like a person brushed it, more like someone grabbed it from behind. A hand, long fingers, barely visible, pulling Jonah out of frame. And in the same second, Alina froze mid-sentence. 2 disappearances, seconds apart, both unnoticed in the chaos of celebration. Tyler pressed a fist to his mouth. Jonah's gone too. No one saw him leave, I said quietly. No one reported him missing because everyone assumed he just slipped out. But then the tech's voice cracked. He's not in any footage after this. Not in the reception, not outside, not in the parking lot, not in guest videos. Jonah Mills had disappeared from the wedding without a trace. And that was the moment I realized the truth. The bride wasn't the first target. She was the last. Whoever or whatever was taking people had been inside that venue long before Alina stepped up to the microphone. The sheriff rubbed his jaw. So we have 3 missing people now, he said. Alina, Leela, Jonah, 4, I corrected. Everyone turned. You're forgetting Robert, I said. We haven't found him conscious since the vineyard footage. Whatever touched him, it did something. Tyler's breathing quickened. You're telling me 4 people were taken before anyone realized anything was wrong? Not exactly, I said. Someone realized? We all turned to the side monitor, the one with an angle almost no one had bothered looking at, a raw clip from a guest's cell phone. It was shaky, unfocused, filmed from the back of the ceremony. But it captured something none of the official footage had. A figure in a dark suit standing far behind the guests, hidden against the vineyard gate, shoulders too straight, head tilted, watching Alina with unblinking intensity. Who is that? The sheriff asked. I already knew because the figure's face, though grainy, was unmistakable. It was Jonah Mills, except something was wrong. His eyes were black, completely black, no pupils, no whites, just a void. And his skin, every inch of it looked waxy, stretched too tight, like someone had replaced his face with a replica that didn't quite fit. Tyler stumbled backward. No, that's not Jonah, that's not human. The sheriff clenched his fists. So Jonah disappeared and then something came back wearing his body? I nodded slowly. Something or someone, and whatever wore Jonah didn't look at the bride like a friend. It looked at her like prey. Tyler sank against the wall. My wife, my friends, Claire, please tell me what this is. But I couldn't, not yet, because the tech paused the clip suddenly, his face draining of color. Guys, look at the reflection in the wine glass the guest was holding. We all leaned in. Behind Jonah, standing in the shadows, was another figure. No face, no features, just an outline, the same outline from the drone footage, the aerial hunter. It had been there the whole time, inside the wedding, watching, waiting. And for the first time, the sheriff said what we were all thinking. This wasn't a kidnapping, this was a harvest. The sheriff's words, this wasn't a kidnapping, this was a harvest, hung in the air like smoke, but the truth was bigger than that. It wasn't just harvesting people, it was selecting them. And Alina had been selected long before her wedding night. We didn't understand how deeply until we returned to the vineyard. It was past midnight when we reached the spot where the drone last recorded the 2 figures, Leela walking like a puppet and the tall, reflectionless thing guiding her. The vines rustled under the cold night breeze. The moon cast long, skeletal shadows across the rows. Everything felt wrong, like the ground still remembered what had happened. The sheriff aimed his flashlight at the soil. We need to search for impressions, tracks, anything. But the moment we stepped between the rows, we saw it. Carved into the dirt, not trampled or dragged, but carved with precision, was a symbol. 5 interlocking lines, curved like a spiral, each arm more detailed than the next. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Tyler stared, trembling. What is that? I crouched down. Not a symbol, I said. It's a message. Because I recognized the pattern, not from law school, not from casework. From one of Alina's old psychiatric interviews her parents had turned over to me earlier that year when I was handling a minor legal matter for her family. Alina had drawn the exact same spiral at age 11. Her therapist's notes described it as the shadow shape in the vineyard. A recurring hallucination she claimed followed her home from summer camp. A figure she said watched her from the trees. Most children grow out of imaginary fears. Alina didn't. And apparently neither did the thing she saw. The sheriff knelt beside me, stunned. Claire, you're telling me Alina saw this years ago? She did more than see it, I said. She reported it. Tyler ran both hands through his hair. She never told me any of this, he whispered. Not once. She wouldn't, I said gently. People don't talk about the things they think make them sound broken. But Alina wasn't broken, she was marked. We followed the spiraled carving deeper into the vines. It looped and curled, each section more aggressively etched. As if whatever created it had been agitated, excited. And then we found something else. A ribbon, white, satin, the same ribbon used to bind Alina's bouquet, but this one wasn't dropped. It was tied to a vine branch, strangled around it, pulled tight, not by delicate fingers, by unnatural force. The sheriff examined the knot. This wasn't tied by human hands. Look at the tension. Look at the compression pattern. Something had yanked it so violently that the ribbon burned into the bark. Tyler swallowed hard. Alina didn't drop that, she didn't place it. She was dragged, I finished. Dragged through this row. We kept moving. And the deeper we went, the stranger the trail became. The vines bent outward, not broken, not trampled, bent as if something had passed through them without touching the ground. As if the air itself had weight. Then we found the second message. Lines drawn not in dirt but scorched into the leaves. Patterns charred in repetitive loops as if a finger made of heat had traced them. The sheriff stepped back, shaken. Claire, this is intentional, purposeful, like it's communicating. It is, I said. We're just not its intended audience. Then Tyler pointed ahead. There, someone's lying there. We ran. Between two vine posts, half buried in loose soil, was a body. We turned him over. Robert Langley, Alina's uncle. Alive, barely. His breath came in shallow, fragile bursts. His pupils flickered. A deep bruise spread across one side of his face. And worst of all, his lips were moving, whispering something over and over. We leaned in. It wasn't English. Wasn't sound. It was rhythm. A pattern, 5 syllables repeating over and over. Matching the exact line structure of the spiral symbol. Tyler grabbed his shoulder. Robert, look at me, please. What happened to you? What did you see? Robert's trembling finger lifted, pointed weakly at the deeper vines. It chose her? He gasped and fell unconscious. The sheriff's voice was low and grim. Something marked Alina years ago, something watched her, followed her, came back for her. But the final message left in the vines confirmed the worst of it. We walked until the rows opened into a circular clearing, a place where the drone footage had glitched. And right there, carved deep into the dirt under a canopy of moonlight, were 2 sets of footprints. One pair human, small, barefoot. Panicked, Alina's, the other pair not human, not remotely. The prints were elongated, 3-pronged, pressed deep into the earth as though each step weighed more than a person. And the stride was outrageously long, like something covering 12 feet in a single step. Tyler collapsed to his knees, shaking violently. It was watching her whole life, wasn't it? Waiting for this moment. Waiting for her wedding night. Claire, why her? Why her? I didn't know, not yet. But as I lifted my flashlight, its beam caught something glinting on a vine leaf above us. A wedding ring, Alina's, still warm. Still coated in the exact shade of foundation she wore that night. Placed gently, purposefully, left behind not as a clue, but as a warning. We didn't have minutes left, we had seconds. The sheriff radioed back up, but deep in the vineyard, signal faded into nothing. Robert lay unconscious behind us, his mind unraveling in a loop of the spiral chant. And somewhere in the vines, 2 Alinas, one real, one impossible, were running toward a place she'd been marked for since childhood. Claire, Tyler whispered, voice breaking, I'm not leaving without her. Neither was I. We followed the prints, Alina's frantic barefoot steps, and the long, predatory strides of the 3-pronged creature. The air thickened. The vines grew tighter, closing in like ribs around a living throat. The moonlight seemed to bend, refusing to fall into the clearing ahead. And then we heard it. A sound that froze the marrow in my bones, not footsteps, not breathing, not a scream. A low, resonant hum like an old generator, but layered with something biological. A pulse. A call, a summoning. Tyler clutched my arm. It found her. We pushed through the last row of vines and the world opened, a circular clearing. The soil burned black in a perfect ring. Vines bowed inward as if worshipping something invisible in the center. The air felt charged, alive, vibrating like a struck tuning fork. And there she was, Alina, kneeling, dress torn, hands over her ears. Eyes wide open but not seeing us. The creature stood behind her, not the tall, reflectionless figure, not the aerial shadow, something else, something larger. Its body flickered, shifting between forms like it was trying to choose a shape that made sense to human eyes and failing. One moment too tall, one moment boneless, one moment stretched like a silhouette torn from the ground. Its surface moved like liquid shadow absorbing moonlight instead of reflecting it, and then it turned. It had no face, yet somehow it looked at us. The sheriff drew his weapon too slow. The air around the creature distorted violently and the gun flew from his hand as if yanked by a magnetic storm. Then something even worse happened. A second Alina stepped into the clearing. The duplicate, dress immaculate, hair untouched, eyes black and empty as a well. She walked toward the creature, head bowed, the perfect bride walking to the altar. Tyler's heart cracked in his voice. No, that's not her, Alina, Elena. The real Alina finally saw us, her eyes filled with relief then terror. Don't come closer, she screamed. It's choosing, please, it's choosing. The creature lifted an elongated limb and touched the duplicate's cheek. The fake Alina blinked slowly as if powered on, then the truth hit me like a punch. It doesn't want to kill her, I said. It wants to replace her. The sheriff stared. Why? Why her? Because the spiral carvings, the childhood drawings, the sightings outside her window, the symbol burned into the vines all pointed to one thing. Alina wasn't a random target. She was a matched subject. A life the creature had studied, copied, mapped, shadowed for years. The harvest wasn't about taking her, it was about taking her place. The sheriff was trembling. It makes mirrors perfect mirrors. Not perfect, I said. They glitch, they melt. They mimic what they see, but they need the original nearby to finish. The creature moved closer to Alina. She sobbed. Claire, it's inside my head. It's been inside my head since I was a kid. I thought it was nightmares. I thought I was crazy. Tyler lunged forward. No, get away from her. The creature reacted not with anger, with interest. Its form shifted, limbs reconfiguring, posture adjusting, as if studying Tyler's face, tasting his desperation. The ground trembled, the vines shuddered. The duplicate Alina stepped forward, reaching toward Tyler with a glassy emptiness that didn't belong in human eyes. Tyler, I shouted, don't let it touch you. But something strange happened. The duplicate froze, her arm convulsed. Her face cracked along the jawline, splitting like plaster under stress. The creature behind her shuddered violently, then I understood. It can't replace a bond, I whispered. It can copy flesh, but not love, not history, not choice. Human connection wasn't compatible with whatever it was. For the first time, the creature recoiled. The duplicate flickered, her entire form glitching like corrupted video. Her face rippled through dozens of versions in a split second, Alina as a teenager, as a child, even faces that weren't hers. Then the creature shrieked without sound. A shockwave hit us. The world went white and everything stopped. When my vision returned, the creature was gone. The duplicate was a collapsed husk on the soil, dissolving into black dust. Alina was sprawled on the ground, sobbing. Tyler held her, shaking, whispering her name over and over. The ring of burned soil had gone cold. The vines stood still, and the vineyard finally was silent. Backup arrived minutes later, but the thing had vanished without trace. Leela was found 2 miles away, barefoot, confused, alive, but remembering nothing. Jonah's body was discovered at dawn on the far edge of the property, empty, like something had used him as a shell and then discarded it. Alina survived, but she never went back to the vineyard, never slept with the lights off again. Never walked near mirrors without checking her reflection twice. Tyler never left her side. And me, I still keep the wedding ring, the one we found tied to the vines, locked in a case in my office. Because some nights when everything is quiet, I swear I hear a low humming through the metal, as if something is still looking, still scanning, still searching, not for Alina, but for the moment it can finish the replacement. This case closed. But not ended.